Susan, if you can, oh, there we go. Starting the recording. So welcome everyone to this virtual plan amendment meeting to discuss NPA 2022-0016.01. Please let us know who is here in the chat box. If you could type your name and organization if you're associated with one. I will use this as the sign-in sheet. Please mute your microphone if you're joining by phone. Please turn off your video if you're participating online to save bandwidth, and this meeting will be recorded and posted to the Speak Up Austin website tomorrow. So again, my name is Maureen Meredith. I do all the plan amendment cases for the City of Austin. The zoning case manager for this case is Heather Chafin, and here's our contact information. So tonight's agenda, I'll go over the basic case information, guidelines for group discussion, how to participate in this process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. I'll go through a brief presentation. The applicant's agent, Michael Whalen, will do a presentation. Then we will have the questions and answers. So the property addresses are 917-923 Shady Lane and 830-838 Airport Boulevard. The property is 2.48 acres. Case number is NPA 2022-0016.01. Project name is 8030 Airport. Flum request is to change the future land use map from commercial and single family to mixed use. The associated zoning case number is C14 2022-0054. The zoning request is to change the zoning on the property from SF3NP and CSCONP to CSMUV-CONP. So the SF3 is Family Residence District, the CS is Community Commercial, and the mixed use and V is mixed use and vertical mixed use with a conditional overlay. Property ownership is Sands Radiator Inc. and 838 Airport 2017 LP. The agent is Michael Whalen from Armbrust and Brown. So the guidelines for the group discussion tonight, please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during this meeting. Please postpone general comments during the Q&A session. After staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol on the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then staff will open the floor to questions and answers in the chat or by attendees raising their hands to speak. Similar questions may be grouped and answered together. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarity of conversation. And if you are having connection issues, please turn off your video until we call you to ask your question. So this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted at the Speak Up Austin website. You can email or call the case managers with any questions or comments that you have. Written comments will be added to the staff case reports, and you will get a notice in the mail of the date, time of the Planning Commission and City Council hearings if you live within 500 feet of the property. And it will have instructions for how you can participate in these public hearings. So why is there a neighborhood plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by the City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. And city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most NPAs are amendments to the plan's future land use map, and most NPAs have an associated zoning application. This map shows the areas in blue that have City Council approved neighborhood plans. These plans consist of the plan documents that has a vision and goal for the planning areas, and also a future land use map. This map has these colors that represent broad land uses. For example, yellow represents single family, orange multifamily, purple industry, red commercial, and brown mixed use. So this property currently has yellow, single family, and red commercial. The existing zoning is SF3, so you can see that is under the yellow land use, and it has the CS commercial, which is under the red land use. The proposed zoning of CSMU and should have would be the mixed use, which is the brown color. This is an aerial photo that shows the property. This is a Google screenshot that shows some of the surrounding uses. This is a future land use map that shows the property has frontage along Airport Boulevard and Shady Lane. The yellow again represents single family. I'm sorry, the yellow represents single family. The red commercial. Across the street to the east of Airport, that light tan color is mobile home land use. To the north, you can see there's some red commercial. To the west, some brown, which is mixed use. And we also see some of the blue, which is it's called the water land use. I don't think we use that anymore. To the south is a bluish color, bluish light purple, and that is a public land use. Here is the zoning map that shows the current zoning on the property and some of the surrounding zoning. This map shows the comprehensive plans growth concept map. And this map shows the property in relation to the map. You can see it's south of the Springdale Station Neighborhood Center, Airport Boulevard, Springdale Road, and also East 7th Street. You can see are designated as activity corridors. This map shows the property in proximity to public transportation. So I will stop sharing my screen. And Michael Whalen can start his presentation.
And I will. Wait for it. Thanks. Hey Jessica, how are you? There's only three of us here, right? Jessica and Rachel. Nice to meet you, Rachel. And if we've met before, I apologize.
Yeah, hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Got the computer working, so that's good.
That is good. Well, obviously, thank you for joining us this evening. And thank you, Maureen, for walking us through that. I'm Michael Whalen. Since this is being recorded, people will know. Representing the applicants for this case. Here with me tonight is Ross Wilson and Michael Gaudini, and I don't think Paul Byers joined us. As Maureen mentioned, and this is just an overview, tonight's meeting is technically about the future land use map amendment, which is more of a high-level statement about what the city wants to see on the site generally. But we do also have an actual proposal in mind, and we know we're going to need 3 major approvals for that. So I wanted to include everything just so that everyone is on the same page and we have a full, understanding of the project and the process. We are proposing, as Maureen just noted, a mixed-use project fronting onto Airport Boulevard with a long-term affordable housing component, specifically 10% of the total number of units provided at 60% of the median family income for 40 years. In order to deliver on this vision, we need 3 main approvals from the city. We are currently working on the first 2 that you see here, zoning and the future land use map amendment. The site, which you're going to see in a moment, and you've already seen kind of generally, is currently zoned partially for CSCO NP and partially for SF3 NP. CSCO generally allows commercial projects but no residential, while SF3 only allows single family and duplex. Neither of these would allow for mixed use or for affordable housing. So instead, we are asking to provide CSVMU across the entire site, which would allow the project to participate in the city's vertical mixed use affordable housing bonus program, which we'll walk through in a minute. The second approval is the future land use map amendment, which reflects this request that we're talking about and would designate the property for mixed use consistent with CSVMU zoning. The third major approval is a future variance request to provide modified compatibility with the support of the affected properties. I want to emphasize that would be with the support of the affected properties. The variance request is in the future, but we wanted to be upfront with everybody that this will be a request that we will be taking forward after we complete the zoning and the flume amendment, and we currently have the support of the affected property for that request, or at least one of the properties for that request. And we will only go forward if we have their support. So that's a lot of technical city speak, but again, what this ultimately boils down to is the ability to provide a mixed-use project along Airport Boulevard that includes affordable housing. This is also a compromise vision. The applicant has worked hard to incorporate feedback from the neighborhood contact team, which I know, Jessica, you've probably been involved with, and I apologize, Rachel, I don't know whether you're on the contact team or your level of involvement, so I apologize. It has earned contact team support with several key conditions that we're going to cover in a moment, all of which we will abide by or will be incorporated into the zoning. So here you can see the site. It's about 2.482 acres located along Airport Boulevard, just south of Baum Road. And here you can see the site in relation to the properties with single family zoning. As you can see, there is a built-in zoning buffer from most of the single family lots, marking this as an appropriate location for mixed use growth. There are two immediately adjacent properties with single family zoning, and both of those property owners currently support our request. And for context, these are the only two properties from which we will be requesting a variance for modified compatibility later on. And again, we would be doing so with their support. We're not seeking compatibility variance from any other properties that might trigger a compatibility. So I want to emphasize, we would be fully compliant with compatibility from all the other single family properties. The site also has meaningful floodplain constraints. You can see here, and next slide, the critical water quality zone constraints, which we want to be sensitive to. In our full proposal with the rezoning, the flume amendment, and the variance helps us account for these important constraints. Also, as I had mentioned earlier, the applicant has done a lot of work on the front end to try and incorporate neighborhood feedback and earn neighborhood support. I think you all know Ross has reached out to the neighborhood in September of 2021 and to the contact team in October, and since then has worked through several different iterations before arriving at the compromise plan that we're presenting today. There was a lot of discussion that occurred over those 8 months, but just to give a sense of that process, I've listed here where things started with the initial proposal versus where things now stand today with the compromise plan. Initially, the applicant wanted to do an MF6 project with only multifamily uses and to ask for a variance from compatibility for the full MF6 height of 90 feet. And through discussions with the neighborhood, it was determined that VMU would be a better fit for the area, which would keep the project to 60 feet of height, which is what the base zoning is, and is what exists there on the site today. It's also what is available to others on nearby mixed use and commercial properties. MS6 would not have offered any affordable housing, whereas the current proposal for VMU would require 10% of all of the units be affordable at 60% of the median family income. And the applicant is also committed to providing a right to return to the new project for the 2 residents that are on the site today and do an affordable unit as long as their incomes qualify under the city's rules. In addition, the applicant is committed to contributing to the East Austin Conservancy to provide property tax assistance to existing East Austin residents. The total contribution will be calculated at $500 per market rate unit in the new project, which is the East Austin Conservancy standard rate for such contributions. The contact team also asked that we limit access to Shady Lane to emergency vehicles only, and to push for no parking on Shady Lane, both of which we will advocate for at the city. Ultimately, the city is the final authority on these 2 items, but we agree with the contact team and will stand with the neighborhood to ask for them. This proposal also has the benefit, as you know, of using the city's vertical mixed use program to deliver on the affordable housing commitments, which means that the city will have full monitoring and enforcement powers to ensure that the units remain affordable. The program requires 10% of all units be provided on site at 60% of the median family income for a total of 40 years. Based off of our current understanding of the site, we estimate that to be anywhere between 20 and 25 new long-term affordable units just on this one I think it's 2.6 acre site. Excuse me. Let me make sure. I want to get that site right. Yeah, 2.4 acre site. So for reference, in order to hit its affordable housing goals for District 3, where this site is located, the city would need to produce an additional 739 affordable units every year. So our project will help do our individual part to get closer to that goal. And as noted, we have also committed to a right to return for the 2 existing residents. So with these compromise plan provisions in place, the contact team has offered its support, as you can see here in this letter, and we appreciate the hard work that they've put in to provide this constructive feedback and work with the applicant on a compromise vision for the site. The only other thing I would point out is was that initially the applicant had proposed seeking a compatibility waiver from 3 parties at 915, 914, and 905 Shady Lane, but they have since determined they could fully comply with compatibility in relation to 905 Shady Lane, since it has a bit of a larger distance between it and the site. So that's why you can see here, the one change is that we will be fully complying with compatibility in relation to 905 Shady and not asking for a variance from that site. So just to recap, the applicant is proposing a mixed-use project with affordable housing fronting onto Airport Boulevard. The property also has buffers between it and other areas with single-family zoning. And to accomplish this vision, the applicant is requesting VMU zoning and a flume designation of mixed use. And we will be following those requests up with a variance from only the 2 closest properties, both of which are in support. Again, we're dropping 905 and we will be fully compliant with 905 Shady. And finally, the applicant has worked with the contact team on a compromise plan that I just showed you. We lowered the height request down to 60 feet. That is standard for the area, and committed to the VMU affordable housing, a right of return for the existing on-site residents, contribution to East Austin Conservancy for the property tax assistance, and to push for limits to access and parking on Shady Lane. That was kind of the summary, and obviously we're here to answer questions. Ross is here as well, who's been working with everybody, and happy to do so. Thanks.
Okay, so I see something in the chat from Rachel. Rachel, do you want to just unmute and talk about it?
Sure. I was on the call, and we have addressed a lot of the things, which is nice to hear. But I know there was a large discussion that not only did the neighborhood want to see affordable units, they didn't want the affordable units to be studios or 1-bedrooms. They wanted to see family units also available in the development, because a lot of the displacement is families as well. And so, you know, having a place for them to go or for families to live in the neighborhood to help support the school systems. So I just didn't know if there was a breakdown of, you know, the units that were going to be in the place, if we're at a point where that's being discussed. And then the second part was just the neighborhood was really hoping to see retail or services. Ideally, the feedback that I've heard from everyone is that they'd love for Goodwill to stay, you know, and have the option to be, you know, at the bottom of the development on the ground floor.
Yeah,
so just those
I'll
things.
second that too. Everyone's really sad to see the Goodwill go. Do you guys know what's going to go in there?
Yeah, I can address those. Just to address Goodwill first. Goodwill's lease is up at the end of next year. They've already told the property owner that they are not going to extend their lease there. They are looking for property on the airport corridor or just off the airport corridor where they can own their real estate and have a facility that stays in the neighborhood. To date, as of a couple months ago, when I got an update on that effort, they had not located anything. But whether the project was built here or not, they are planning to move off because the facility that they're in there on airport just doesn't function great. It doesn't have a loading area. Has a challenging kind of parking situation. So they will be moving off after the end of their lease here next year. On the kind of pro rata mix for affordability, it certainly was part of a conversation with the General Association as well as the plan and contact team, and ultimately as we kind of got into the conversations and we're talking about the balance of height and massing with the benefit of affordability, the neighborhood plan and contact team chose or felt that the 60-foot height limit was critical here. And that limited the size of the project to where the applicant couldn't agree to a pro rata mix on affordability at the VMU required 60% MFI. If you guys remember the conversations, and when we were having those conversations, we were talking about an MF6 project likely at that point was already limited to 75 feet in height, but had allowed for more units, and we were talking about 10% affordability at 70% MFI. And that once we shifted to the VMU, that requires a 60% MFI, and therefore applicant couldn't agree to the pro rata mix. As a way to kind of help with affordability for families in the neighborhood, that was part of the reason to pivot and work with EAC on a contribution for the property tax assistance program. So that was kind of all of the factors and how we got to the agreement that we have in front of you with the agreement with the neighborhood and plan and contact team that we have in front of you here.
Okay, so I need to just recap that quickly. I'm not familiar with a lot of the terminology. So what I understand is that the negotiations that you've made to take it down to the zoning as well as the height have limited the size of the units.
The size of the project and the number of units.
I understand that. I guess I understand that. What I'd like to know is what types of units will be in, what types of units will there be units that families can live in the development?
Yeah, I mean, the plan right now is a mix of predominantly 1 and 2 bedrooms. They are considering a few 3 bedrooms, but that will not be a prominent unit type in the property in the unit mix for this project.
Okay, so is there ground floor retail in commercial?
Yeah, right now we have planned for the ground floor commercial space to comply with the VMU regulations. So there will be commercial space for the ground floor.
Thank you.
I'm really happy to hear that. We've had a lot of the apartments going in on Airport that are getting the VMU and not having any commercial component in the bottom, and it's just turning it into a very trafficy area. So I appreciate that very much. And I know you've been working with a committee from the contact team. Candy couldn't be here, so that's why you guys got me. Sorry. I guess the only question that I have is, maybe this is more for Meredith, Maureen. What's the deal with VMU 2? Has that passed? Would that have any effect on this project if it does pass?
I don't know the details of that. Susan, are you familiar with the VM? Anybody else can answer that? Michael?
Yeah, I could probably, or maybe Michael could step in, but I would say there's a lot of up in the air still on VMU2. The currently compatibility is going to limit this property from taking advantage of any additional height on the corridor, which is the main proposal for VMU2. In fact, I think it even limits some of the edges of this property to less than 60 feet based on the SF3 zoning from some of the properties on Gullet Street and the SF3 zoning on 905 Shady Lane.
And in terms of the VMU2 process as well, it has continued to just get pushed back. So it has not passed. There is a proposal pending in front of council, but it's been on multiple agendas and gotten postponed each time. I think that so far council has wanted to kind of sync up their discussion of various different housing related issues to bring those things kind of together into a cohesive discussion. But they have not moved forward at this time on kind of on any of those disparate elements. So I don't know when council is going to take a vote on that, and in addition to that, when they do take action, it's unclear what the final version of VMU2 is going to look like.
Yeah, I guess just long story short, I really like the compromise plan that you guys have come to. I think this is going to be great. I'm glad there's commercial on the bottom. I'm glad East Austin Conservancy is going to get some help. You know, like Rachel said, I wish there could have been family units. I wish Goodwill can stay there. But all that being said, I appreciate you working with that committee on those compromises. But my only worry is that, you know, we get to this position and then VMU2 comes into play and you guys are able to build much taller. Is there a world where that could happen? Is my question.
Possibilities in the world are generally endless. I can
Yeah,
tell you,
I mean,
I don't know what it's going to look like.
It's really, Jessica, you've been watching it. It's really hard to tell what's going to happen. They're all over the place on the issue.
Would you guys refile?
Pardon?
If VMU2 passes next month, are you guys going to refile for a new different zoning?
Oh, I have no idea. Again, I think there's so many
Well,
pieces to this. I mean, first of all, if we did, we would have to come back to you.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's the good news. So I can't, that really would be a client determination looking at, oh my gosh, to go through all of this again, maybe not. Maybe just get through this and get this and start going down this path rather than restarting. So I can't speak for Ross or for anybody else. I think there's so many open pieces to this right now and so much bickering that's going on. Just watch the work session. So we just have to wait and see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you pull up? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I'll echo what Michael's saying and just say that I know the ownership group here is there's, you know, time is important to them at this point. So not only would we have to come back to you if it was a VMU or we decided to do that, it would change the time frame, which I think is very unlikely. And so I don't think you need to be concerned about a VMU2 and 90 feet. Even if by some miracle I was able to fly through the city process in the next month or two.
Okay. That sounds true. Mr. Whalen, could you pull up the map again and show Rachel the variances, the compatibility variances that are going to apply to Gullet Street? So Rachel lives right behind.
I
Rachel?
live on Lyons, but I had a meeting with the block of neighbors that are pretty much to the west. So directly behind the woman who owns the properties that are directly behind the house that's requesting the variance, that'll have the variance on Shady, and then down all the way down Lyons.
Yep. So this is all the single family. If you go to the next one, these are the only two that we're going to be seeking a compatibility variance from. So that means that all those people on Gullet will have the benefit of compatibility, which limits height.
Yeah, they will still trigger.
They all trigger it. We're not seeking to modify compatibility as to the people that live on Gullet. Does that make sense, Rachel?
I think so. So you're not trying to modify theirs, right? But what does changing this one that's on the west side of Shady do to impact those houses? You know, that home that this one that I believe you're requesting the variance from is also, you know, for sale. So, you know, like who knows what they're going to do with that property.
Yeah, so if you type in, I'll get this. This is a compatibility exhibit that's available. If you type in compatibility exhibit on the city website,
Mm-hmm.
and let me just share this with you. Can you tell me if you can see this? Can you see this, Rachel?
Yes.
So this is, if you just type in compatibility exhibit, City of Austin, this will pop up.
Yeah.
And this shows you that what happens is when you have a SF5 or more restrictive, and that would be these single family homes,
Right.
zoned property, they trigger compatibility, which means from their property line, you can't have any structure for 25 feet. From 25 to 50 feet, it can only be 30 feet or 2 stories. From 50 feet to 100 feet, it can only be 40 feet or 3 stories. And then it increases by 1 foot for every 10 feet. So at 200 feet, you can be at 50, which is, you know, 2/3 of a football field. And if you're a football field away, you can be at 5 stories or 60 feet.
So where the development is planned on the lot won't be far enough away to get the 60 feet from that house. So you're asking basically that house for permission, and they're granting permission for you to go 60 feet.
That's right.
And then
Because
that doesn't impact their zoning or anything
No.
of anyone nearby them.
No, that's exactly right. So because they're at least the one adjacent to the property is right there, you wouldn't even be able to put a fire lane in that 0 to 25 space.
Right.
Okay.
And in terms of like your the other question I believe that you're asking was, you know, if that property to the west of the site were to go up for sale and potentially become something else, what could happen there? The answer is all of those let me go back 1 slide. All of these other properties. Oh wait, I'm not sharing anymore. But I'll pull it up. All those other properties would trigger upon that one. So it wouldn't change the fact that all these properties that back up to this would still trigger upon that one and upon ours as well. But it wouldn't change kind of like this, the us waiving compatibility in relation to that does not change that status in relation to y'all, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
How far is so is it, what's the distance between the western edge of the site and those single family houses on Gullet? Is that 300 feet or more?
Ross, do you know the distance by any chance?
It's just under that. I think it's 275. If you give me a second, I can pull a dimension here real quick. So right on the property line, on the western property line of the property that we're talking about, I believe it's about a 55-foot height that's allowed.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's basically a 5-foot difference that you need.
No, that we're talking about the properties from Govalle Street, and I guess what I'm saying is that they will, the properties from Govalle Street will impact the property and require that the height at the property line is 55 feet or less.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so basically I've been speaking to a lot of the neighbors along Gullet and basically kind of Lion. So everybody that's kind of like directly west of the development in the brown that's up now.
And again, compatibility is independent, Rachel, of zoning, and it stands as a separate restriction beyond zoning, and and we're not seeking to modify or a variance from compatibility as to the homes that are on Gullet. They will be protected by the compatibility provisions of the code.
Okay, great.
If
So,
that makes sense.
yep, they'll be under the example that we just looked at, the drawing, they will fall underneath that.
Yes. You mean the exhibit I showed you, the compatibility chart from the city of
Yes.
Austin? Yes.
Yes. Okay, I just had another question too, was just, are the current owners retaining ownership through the project? I saw that they are the applicants, or they're the owners, but not the applicants.
I'm not sure I'm following you on the owners versus the applicants there, but the intent is for the ownership group to participate in this development. There's equity partners, and development partners that'll be brought in. So the exact entity that currently owns the property, may change before the development's done. But the intent right now is for the ownership group to remain in as part of this deal through the development.
Okay. Thanks. I was just curious because they're, also they live around the corner. So just, yeah, good to know.
But Rachel, I would just emphasize that's why the zoning, that's why the contact team and the applicant have reached an agreement that will be reflected in the zoning, so that whoever owns it won't impact the parameters that have been established by the zoning.
Yeah, I don't think Sam's sticking around, Rachel.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let me clarify that. Sam Casares is under contract to the ownership group that we represent on the property.
Okay, got it. Because that's who it says the current owner is. So they will not be.
Ross, I think you're using two different terms. So that we're clear. There's ownership of the property. When you say ownership, you're talking about the group that's got it under contract. It really should be, you're the buyer. It's scheduled to be bought by Ross and his group. The owner is the applicant and owns the actual real estate today. It'll, because zoning is complex and site development permits are complex in Austin, people typically don't close on their property to become the owner until after they've gone through this process.
Great. Okay. So the intent is that the ownership will transfer after this process is complete.
Yeah, Sam's selling.
Yes, that's what I was trying to clarify.
So I'm just going to chime in. So with the NPA application, the way we look at it is you have the people who currently own the property, and that's their name on TCAD. And then the applicant is typically a future purchaser, and that they're going through the rezoning process with the intent to purchase in the event they get the plan amendment and zoning. And then the agent would be, the company that's representing either both or one of the parties. So that's how we look at that owner, applicant, agent on the applications.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that clarification.
Okay. So I don't see any more questions in the chat. Feel free to just ask questions. I will just wait here and for new questions. If not, we can just end the meeting early.
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I know you guys have been working with the committee, and so I appreciate you coming to these compromise positions. And yeah, I don't have anything to add.
Jessica, don't leave early. Come on now.
Okay, well, since you mentioned it, no, I'm just kidding.
So I will get this recorded meeting posted to the Speak Up Austin website tonight, so people who were unable to attend tonight can watch it. So I can do that as soon as we end the meeting.
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you for the clarifications.
Okay. Okay, so if there's nothing else, I will go ahead and see if I can stop the recording. Stop recording.